Okay. All right. Things are not going well. I think that's fair to say. The Raptors have now lost against the Pistons and the Magic back to back. It was tough. 6 games in 8 nights coming out of the All-Star break. That's tough for any team, let alone a team that is missing, players who are as important as Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby. And especially considering the context of the Raptors roster dictates that they really rely on their shooters, the few of them that they do have. And those few being, you know, Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, and Fred VanVleet. And in this game, Malachi Flynn did his best job trying to emulate some of that, 3-point make punch. And I think he's probably closest to giving you like an OG Anunoby type catch and shoot production over this, I guess, 4-game stretch where he's been a starter. And that's really great because, the Raptors need it, but it doesn't mean that they're in a really great spot shooting. And that's why they scored 97 in this game. And another game outside of the one where they blew the doors off of the Nets, and I think they went 18 of 38 from 3, and everybody and their mom was hitting triples. They've shot poorly. Their 3-point volume is down in makes and in attempts and in percentage. And it's really tough to win in the NBA if you don't, not just when you're missing 3-point shots, but when you can't even get teams to really respect that you might shoot them at a decent rate. So you don't get a lot of open lanes as a driver. You turn the defense and you make a pass to a guy cutting or sliding into the dunker spot or something like that. And so you become overly reliant on isolation from players like Pascal Siakam, and he gives you the world. He goes 13 of 20 from the field. He hits 2 threes himself. He gets to the line for 8 free throws, 34 points. It really, really impressive stuff. And like the 5 turnovers, it's too much, but how are you going to blame him considering how tough the offensive context is that he's trying to survive in currently? And he drove the Raptors as far as he could in this game. And Malachi Flynn picked it up late, but that just wasn't enough. Precious, also a guy who, I said this in the quick reaction, the write-up that I did, maybe I would blame Precious's decision-making a little bit more. Well, I definitely would if Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby were currently in the lineup. Then some of these expressive, self-authoring plays that Precious wants to put on his plate and take on, they look a lot worse because you're like, well, do I really want to endorse a big man who shoots 4 of 12 from the field, goes 2 of 4 from deep? So that means that he went 2 of 8, a lot of it off the bounce and near the rim. And to his credit, he was close on a lot of them, just centimeters away from greatness on these drives. But in these games, who else is going to do it? Gary Trent Jr. went 4 for 23. Tonight he went 2 for 12. And he had a lot of open shots. He went 0 for 9 from downtown. Had great looks, just didn't hit a damn thing. And so in a game like this, 4 of 12 from Precious Achiuwa, he has 11 points. Yeah, you take that. That is found money. It's not efficient, but it's significantly more efficient than you're getting out of anybody except for Pascal and Malachi. Like if you look at Scotty, 4 for 15. Gary, 2 for 12. Kem, a terrific 0 for 1. Precious is, creating some looks for himself. And while that didn't create a bunch, he hit his 2 threes. I think his offensive creation, his offensive usage is justified over this stretch as, middling or low end as it has been at times, as high as it gets at others. You just have to, you have to take your medicine. This is what the team needs right now. Guys who are willing to try things out, to try and create, because they're so limited as a team. And the Magic with, some zone, some man-to-man, they did a pretty damn good job of keeping the Raptors in their limited spaces outside of Pascal Siakam because they don't have a guy who can stick Pascal. And Pascal appears to be back in form. He was sick after the All-Star break, had some games that really didn't look like him. Well, he's back now, and he can't be guarded one-on-one. In some cases, he can't even be doubled. It doesn't work, but he keeps driving into, these small areas and making shots out of nothing. But Malachi Flynn and that late burst of pick-and-roll creation, both, as a playmaker and a driver, it was really great to see. He's maximizing the small parts of the game because he isn't a pick-and-roll engine. He isn't the engine of an offense at any given time, but as I said, catch and shoot, he's emulating some of OG Anunoby's output there. And while it isn't as, get to the corner, hit a three from there, or, set a pick, pop out, hit a little catch and shoot, pick and pop shot. It's not that clean, but Malkai is moving on, above the break a lot of the time, finding open spots. And then if a guy feeds them there, he hits a three. It's not like you get a whole bunch of, Malkai pulling up from three or anything. That hasn't been the case over this 4 games, but pushing in transition, attacking closeouts on occasion, and being able to play make and score out of the pick and roll. He's just provided so much more than anybody would have expected in this stretch. It's just dumb luck that I happened to look at the context of the team prior to this and say, hey, maybe Malkai has a chance. And then he was starting, like 4 hours later or something, and has started every game since, and probably will continue to start until Fred VanVleet is back. And he's made the most of it. That's the silver lining. He and Pascal and Precious to some degree in this game, because the Raptors stunk. Again, they can't score the ball. They're too limited as an offense. They don't have versatile enough creators. And their most versatile creator isn't a huge three-point threat. This isn't like Donovan Mitchell or Jamal Murray, one of those, all NBA / all-star level players who are guards. They might take a screen, like a drag screen, a step-up screen or whatever, and just kill a drop defense. Or even if they're at the level of the screen, take a big man out wide, snatch it back and hit a three in their face, or drive or something like that. But Pascal doesn't dictate that type of defense. He's better at other things. Like, he's much better at a lot of things than both Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell are. You can see like a lot of it in this game by getting into the paint so frequently and just being so proficient in there, and in that little short mid-range spot as well. They can't do that either, but he can't do what they do. And that is the duality of the NBA, or, what would the term be? The spectrum of the NBA, because creators exist on all types of plot points and that kind of stuff. And Pascal exists in one that it's really, really tough right now. And man, the Raptors just can't set their watch to like a Pascal-led offense if there's no shooting. And he can't, because the easiest thing for a team can do, anybody who's played men's league, women's league, whatever, if a team packs the paint and your team can't shoot, what the hell are you going to do? Even your best players can't just go ram themselves into the paint. And that is why it's kind of funny. Lewis just messaged me and said, I love when we're both right, because we were talking about Malachi Flynn and how often he receives, how often he can get the pick and roll defender to, lock and trail, to go over the screen rather than under. And we were having a conversation online, which are often get confused. And I was saying like, well, typically he gets the over, like teams follow him over. And I'm talking about, on the grand scale of how he's been defended in the NBA. And he was talking about specifically in this game. And I can't remember exactly what, how it would break out between how many overs and unders there were. But I think it might be the case that we're both right, even though it seemed like we were disagreeing. So something funny. But yeah, I mean, the Raptors are so limited. You've seen this as a player. Whoever you are listening, you've seen this as a player. And the Raptors are currently dealing with it because they don't have the shooting talent to make it no longer the case. These Raptors games, if you're an NBA fan, these have to be kind of unfamiliar to your eye because of the absolute disrespect that is shown to the Raptors shooters on a grand scale. And it's tough for them to overcome. And in these cases, they aren't overcoming it. And not enough of them are overcoming it. The most, let's say, dynamic creators on the roster currently are, honestly, it's Precious Achiuwa for a big man. He really has to be able to get into an efficient, he has to be more efficient, but there is definitely a dynamism to him, of course. Pascal Siakam is as dynamic as they come at his size and stature and all that. And Malachi Flynn has way more shake and boogie and downhill punch than Gary Trent Jr., for example. Gary Trent, his whole bag is shooting. Now, he's been able to turn the corner a little bit more with a little bit more regularity, in the past, however, over the past couple months, but that was only in the context of second side action and working against disadvantaged defenses already. And oftentimes it was when he was sharing the court with Siakam, Fred, and OG. So he gets single coverage and there's less, helpers and that kind of stuff. But when he's one of the focal points, he's having a tough time shaking loose, A, because of the help defense waiting for him, dig downs, rotations, all that kind of stuff. And B, his shooting just isn't there right now. And I'm not particularly concerned about that. This is something I've been very steady on this season as, an analyst, as a commentator, is that, the on-ball creation that Gary Trent provides is a boon always, and I'm always glad to have it. But his three-point shooting, his catch and shoot three-point shooting, to me, is the most important facet of his game. Even as he exploded for that, over 11 games, scored 28 points per game and was like 50-50-90 splits, just a super fun stretch of basketball. It's That's not him all the time. And you just want him to be, when he's not, taking these step backs from 19 feet and hitting everything and, kind of boogieing on dudes and going to the same move over and over and changing the arc on his shot and making all these incredible plays. It's when he's not able to do that, because very few players can. You want him to be able to at least, lock those knees in, get those feet set, hit those threes to help out your team. And over this past stretch of games, he just hasn't been doing that. And that's okay, because it'll come around. I'm almost certain of it. But this is part and parcel of Gary Trent Jr.'s game. This is something that he's been dealing with a bit of streakiness in his career. He's still young. This could be something that is only now and not in the future. It remains to be seen. But I'm not too worried about it, but I do consider it part of his game. So, that's kind of how it is. And then defensively, I didn't really have that much problem with how the Raptors defended in this game. Of course, it started out sloppy, like the 27 points in the first quarter, the 31 in the fourth quarter. But the fourth quarter was really high pace. And the Raptors, they just don't like, if you score 37 in a quarter and you allow 31, I'm not going to blame your defense. And so the Raptors outscoring them 37-31 in the fourth quarter. That was a good quarter for them, even though they allowed 31. Yes, some rotations here or there help. Yes, getting back on defense more often helps. And oftentimes Pascal was the only guy back. There was like 4 transition buckets over the course of the game where it was like Pascal is like a 3-on-1. And that's really tough. And some of that is the Raptors, their intermittent pressing that they sometimes like to launch. And Scotty Barnes, I don't know if this is something he's agreed upon with Nick Nurse or whatever, but Scotty, like 3/4 court, half court pressure that he always gets beat on. Uh, I haven't been a fan of that all year. I've been consistent on that, and I don't think he has the foot speed to stay with guards. I think that's been something that's been kind of objectively true this year, and whether he gets there, I'm not sure, but he's definitely succeeded at a lot of other things defensively. But I haven't seen an elongated stretch where he's ever been able to kind of stick a guard and make it look good. And guys like Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and Precious Achiuwa all have, and Scotty just hasn't. So he's looked good elsewhere though, like backline sweeper role. That game against New York on, I think it was December 14th, still, or December 10th maybe. It still lives, very large in my mind, because he was so proficient at that backline sweeper role. So yeah, there's just defensive mistakes being made. But if they score more efficiently and they make the Magic take the ball out of their own bucket, their defense would look fine in this game. I don't think that was why they lost. They lost because they're a very limited offensive team, which is frustrating. But OG is out, Fred is out, and they're trying to kind of amalgamate their roles and what other guys can do. And Malachi's done a hell of a job, but when Gary Trent Jr. falls off a cliff at the same time, you're just asking too much from guys who haven't been able to historically give you very much at all. If we're looking at like Svi and Thad and Utah and Delano coming into these games, it's too much to ask of these guys. Maybe one will blow up every once in a while, but it's not going to happen like that. Reggie Evans Award winner, Pascal, just has to be. I think he played brilliantly. He has over the past 2 games. I kind of I saw a comment, and I still read comments if you're a Raptors Republic commenter. Like Lee's, I didn't get to a chance to respond to it, but you commented and said that you really enjoyed my article from this morning, and thank you. I just whatever, but there was a comment that thought my piece about last night's game was too complimentary of Pascal and was doing a happy dance for him, but like. I didn't mean it to come off that way. I was just kind of like, this is what is, obligated of this Raptors team. And I thought I actually spent more time talking about Precious Achiuwa in the piece than Pascal, for example. But, they're in a position now where they can hardly shoot 3-pointers. this is a team that's trying to innovate and trying to win these games from a very limited standpoint, and they can hardly create anything at all. And I think the position it puts Pascal in is extremely interesting and so difficult. And watching him try and kind of map out the court when it's this shrunk is fascinating. And to see Precious Achua try and pop off as a creator, Malachi Flynn try and pop off as a creator, and Gary Trent Jr. even to watch a guy go 4 for 23 from the field and take 15 threes, even tonight, 2 of 12 from the field, take 9 threes. That's interesting because you get to see what the defense is obligating those guys to do, and like what means do they have to counteract that defense. How can you make that defense change so it's more advantageous for you? And that's mostly what I was trying to get at in the piece. And I don't have a piece scheduled for tomorrow or anything like that, but I hope that's what what's coming across is, these games are interesting for that alone because it is ugly basketball. So you have to try and glean other types of things from this stuff. But yeah, man, it's tough. The Raptors, they lost this one because they cannot score the ball well enough. And yeah, them's the breaks. Top quick reaction comment is from Cad DeVille. Quote, "It's all right. We have the 7th seed on lock. Great news is Flynn is in the zone. Bad news is Gary has gone cold. He's in the Norm Powell phase, hot and cold. Man, I wish we didn't have the All-Star break. Oh well, just keep grinding. Cleveland is falling, so let's see if we can grab that spot." End quote. Okay, Cad, you've said one thing here that I vehemently disagree with. Norm Powell was not streaky for the final 3 years. Like he had one down streak over a 3-year stretch, a 3-season stretch with the Raptors, but he was as consistent as they come for the Raptors, especially like post championship 2019-20, 2020-21. He had like maybe a bad 9-game stretch, but he was as solid as they come. He's been shooting like 40% over 4 seasons from downtown. Like he's like a 50, 40, 80 guy over a 4-season stretch. He's so consistent. I never understood that. There's many people I've talked to, Raptors analysts, the people on the broadcast, people I know personally who have this idea of Norm Powell as this inconsistent player. And I completely disagree. And I feel like, certainly anybody can disagree with me. That doesn't matter. But I'm somebody who is on the tape, objectively has watched every game because you hear me talk about every game. And I look at the stats and I try and figure it out. I got to tell you, he's pretty damn consistent and even was in a Raptors jersey. So, yeah. And also, like, I don't find Gary and Norm analogous whatsoever. I think their play types couldn't be farther away from each other. Like, Gary has this elastic, incredible ability to shoot from mid-range and even from 3-point land. But Norm is just like this, you give him a pin down, he'll come off of it like a bullet and dunk on somebody. And Gary will just never do that. And also Norm, man, when he got into the paint and just could finish and, finish over people through contact and everything. And even he had like pick and roll reps that came along in a meaningful way, in 2020, 21. Yeah. But everything else he said is just like, yeah, it's okay. You obviously recognize that the Raptors are missing 2 big, important players. And yeah, man, it's tough. But yeah, if they find Cleveland in the standings and kind of climb over top of them, I have no problem with that. Thanks for writing in, Cad. Thanks for listening in, listener, whether you got into it in the morning or at night. Have a blessed day and goodbye.